Welcome back to our video series about the science, philosophy, and metaphysics behind information field technology. This is Chapter 2, where we take a closer look on the information field. The information field also appears in other areas of science, yet under different names. For example, Rupert Sheldrake calls it a morphic field. You all have probably heard about the morphogenetic field, but the English term, the scientific term, is morphic field or morphic resonance. It's a field which transfers the information of shape, morphos. It is looking at the information field through the eyes of biology. Ervin Laszlo, a systemic scientist, one of the founders of the Club of Rome and the founder of the Club of Budapest, wrote many papers about the Akashic field. It's the same concept as Akash in Sanskrit, a term that is probably closest to the information field. Then there is William Miller Jr., a professor of biology. He uses the term pervasive information field, which is a term that originally comes from sociology to describe information fields. He stated the following: "It has been previously advanced that all living entities assess information beyond their immediate environment and exist as part of a system of pervasive information fields, PIFs. This means that we all have access to some information, for example through the internet, but it is always information from our immediate environment. So what the information field gives us is access to non-local information. This reflects how the wholeness of information influences us and exists as part of a system of pervasive information fields." These fields of information are best modeled by a concept introduced by MIT professor Seth Lloyd in 2002 as self-organizing universal and scale-free informational sets that can be appropriately applied to biological organisms. Within this frame, each living organism has its own unique information field within space-time as a corollary to an outer information space. According to this theory, there is an information space which connects all living entities. Within this information space, everyone has their own information field, i.e., the information they can access throughout space. Now let us talk a bit about someone who has worked extensively with information fields in multiple dimensions, namely German physicist Burkhard Heim. In Burkhard Heim's world model, there exists a six-dimensional energy space and a six-dimensional informational space. Through mathematical operations, especially Fourier transformations, they are mapped onto each other. This reflects a process of reality. Unfortunately, Burkhard Heim wrote exclusively in German, so you won't find much about him in English-speaking countries, with one exception: Heim's theory of elementary particle structures in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, authored by Hillebrand von Ludwiger. If we talk about the information field, we find something very similar in physics: the vacuum. What is a vacuum anyway? The vacuum is the lowest energy state in physics, in quantum field theory. This lowest energy state, or zero energy state, is not any more effective by energy, and it cannot be directly measured. So the only fundamental physical term which can relate to vacuum is information. The Russian scientist and philosopher Vasily Nalimov proposed a twin type of vacuum related to the physical vacuum of quantum field theory, which he calls a semantic vacuum, a field of all potential meanings. The physical vacuum is a field of all potential particles, and on the basis of the physical vacuum, there exist operators, mathematical operators, which generate particles. If a particle such as an electron is generated from the vacuum, its antiparticle, a positron, is also immediately generated. In the same way, Vasily Nalimov has proposed a semantic vacuum, which is the field of all potential meanings that entangles a physical vacuum. So there exists a vacuum of structures of particles and a vacuum of meanings. The lowest energy states of the physical vacuum can entangle with specific states of meaning of a semantic vacuum. In this way, complex configurations of both kinds of vacuum can entangle with those of the other elements that constitute the information field. The lowest energy states of the physical vacuum are represented in organic living matter as long-range correlations and coherent domains of water and matter with decreased entropy. Ordering influences of quantum vacuum states are generally manifested in the decrease of entropy in the system, which is otherwise dominated by quantum fluctuations. Here is a concept by physics professor Masroor H.S. Bukhari, the author of a paper titled On Quanta of Information and Electromagnetic Fields, the Information Theoretic Origin and Structure of Quantum Fields. He developed the notion of the information field which exchanges energy with electromagnetic fields. He developed a so-called Hamiltonian, which is an operator used in the Schrödinger equation of quantum physics to describe how a physical state develops over time. It contains three terms. The first term is the operator for generating photons or particles and antiparticles from the vacuum. The second term is a state which is related to the energy of the information field. The third term is an interaction between the information field and the electromagnetic field. The Hamiltonian, which is the most fundamental operator of energy in the Schrödinger equation, consists of an electromagnetic, an informational, and an interaction part, the latter being about the entanglement between information and electromagnetic fields. This is another publication that deals with an introduction of information fields, and again, the question is, how does an information field interact with other types of physical matter? For more than 20 years, there was a dialogue going on between Wolfgang Pauli, a Nobel laureate in physics, and Carl Gustav Jung, who was the most prominent psychologist of his time. These two brilliant minds tried to understand through their dialogue what the common reality behind the physical and psychological reality might be. Nobody can deny that there is a physical reality, and nobody would claim that it is a psychological reality. We understand that there is a physical reality, but we also acknowledge the psychological process which creates a psychological reality, an internal reality, if you will. We also understand that there is a sense medium in which these different realities connect, which is related to the information field, and this is exactly the concept that Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Jung had come up with. They called it the Unus mundus. Unus mundus means one world, and they use the term to describe psychophysical reality. This psychophysical reality is a holistic reality, a kind of implicate order of a collective and individual unconscious, explaining from this one world, through a dynamic process and imperial facts of local realism, the physical reality and consciousness on the other side. In this diagram, their concept of the Unus mundus is related to the concept of the eminent physicist David Bohm. He worked with Albert Einstein in Princeton until 1949, later moving to London, where he became a professor at the Birkbeck College of the University of London. Bohm wrote a famous book called Wholeness and the Implicate Order. Behind the explicate order, which is the order which we can objectify, which we can touch, which we can see, which we can describe by physics with our theories and models, there's always an implicate order that escapes objectification. The more we try to objectify, the more we also strengthen the side of the implicit order. The explicit and implicit orders are linked by what he referred to as a holo movement. The implicit order constantly unfolds into an explicit order, which in turn unfolds into an implicit order. This is a process of life, a process of consciousness. This structure of reality, which David Bohm divides into an explicate and an implicate order and into the holo movement, is rooted in the very structure of consciousness itself. Consciousness has an implicit aspect, implicit consciousness, which is our self-consciousness, our very identity within ourselves, the reflection of ourselves with each of us being our own subject and our own object. There is only a very small difference between ourselves being simultaneously a subject and an object. This is implicit consciousness, the basis of self-consciousness. Consciousness is aware of itself while simultaneously being aware of everything else. The structure found by David Bohm defines the explicate and the implicate order and provides a mathematical formalism for it. This attracted the interest of Einstein, Heisenberg, and everyone who read this theory. It is still revolutionary. Even today, his work, which started in 1952, 70 years ago, is still being discussed, and it is still one of the most promising interpretations of quantum theory. Here is a paper by Marcus Schmieke about quantum entangled frequencies, coherence, and bioenergetic systems. He uses the following definition for the information field. We refer to the quantum processes of body, mind, and the deep psyche as a person's individual information field. It consists of the quantum information contained in the sum of generalized quantum entanglements, both in the human being and between the human being and their environment. The subset of an individual's information field is recognized by the National Institutes of Health as the bioenergetic field. The bioenergetic field communicates with the biological body via dynamic quantum processes. Henry Stapp describes the information field as consisting of intrinsic unities of mind and matter. The information field expresses on the material and energetic level as quantum entanglement of particles and states of complex systems. They indicate the deeper levels of interconnectedness on the informational level. Marcus Schmieke. Thus, the meaning of information expresses itself internally and externally as quantum entanglement of a system. The internal entanglement establishes the unity of the living entity in itself as a subject and an object for itself, whereas external entanglements connect the system with its environment. The self-referential and self-organizing properties of the information field depend on those double dynamics of self-referentiality and relation to each other. This is an illustration from a publication by Marcus Schmieke showing the physical nature with the molecular body on the bottom. Above it, you see the electromagnetic body of the human being. In the electromagnetic body, there is a classical and a quantum area. The quantum area is coherent electromagnetic vibration, but it's also coherent domains in water, this being mirrored by a quantum reality of entanglements. All the hidden relationships, the implicate order, are contained in the global information field and the individual information field.